You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. My name's Joe George. You can find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. The Bulls lose 143-107. They've given up 287 points in their last two games. My gosh, they get ran out of the building by the Houston Rockets. What a disaster. They're so bad tonight. This was an awful game for the Bulls. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the game and what it was like. Some things in this game that they could have pivoted from, in my opinion, that would have made things maybe a little more competitive in this one. And definitely the fact, this is a win for the Pro Tank fans out there. Like, I've been resilient so far this season. The Bulls have been resilient so far. I saw, some of the radio hosts in town of Chicago talking about, like the Bulls might be too good for their own good. I'm not so sure about that, to be honest. What a mess of a performance from the Bulls tonight. So let's get into it. The Bulls come out, they're going toe-to-toe with the Rockets on, but they're shooting the ball terribly right away. I mean, they are shooting 26% from the free throw line and from the three-point line in the first quarter, the first half, I believe it was. Just a pathetic performance. I mean, 21 of your first 26 points comes from Kobe White, Vooch, and Levine. So you're down 20, you're down 27-26 after a quarter. So you're starting off fine, but you're 4 from 16 from the three-point line. Like I said, you end the first half shooting 26% from the three-point line, and that's really when you're down by 16. The Rockets start to pull away with this. And look, so if you don't know this, longtime Bulls fan here, born and raised in Illinois, lived in Illinois until the last 10 years of my life. Last 10 years, I've worked in Houston sports radio, so I host a show Monday through Friday on ESPN Houston. So I'm very familiar with this Rockets team, just like I'm very familiar with this Bulls team. And look, this is a young up-and-coming team that's played really good basketball so far this season for the Rockets. And they just showed you how far away the Bulls can be from being competitive. Like, the energy they matched, the tanking that they did worked so effectively, even though they never won the lottery. And the Bulls have a bunch of guys that Rockets fans, I think, look at and say, I hope Jalen Green's never Zach LaVine. I hope Alperen Sengun is never Nikola Vucevic. Like, that's what they're thinking when they see this matchup tonight. But the Rockets just running the Bulls out of the gym. Just an awful performance. And the fact that you've given up 287 points in two games, it's terrible basketball. Play some defense. For the fourth time, I had to watch the local Rockets broadcast since I couldn't watch on League Pass because it's blacked out for me. So I heard them, besides just laughing at the Bulls and the fans, cheering for hot dogs at the end of the game, because that's all we have to cheer for right now in Chicago sports. It feels like it's hot dogs and blocked field goals right now. Things are bad. Bears hat, things are bad. But look, the Rockets, for the fourth time in their franchise history, a franchise in which they've had players like Hakeem Olajuwon, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, James Harden, who used to just get buckets in the paint, for the fourth time in their franchise history, got 80 points in the paint in this game. The Bulls allowed 80 points to the Houston Rockets in the paint. It is just terrible defense, lack of effort, everything. And when the three-point shooting is as bad as it is, you're not going to win many basketball games. The fact that it was as close as it was in the first quarter was a surprise, because the Bulls are just missing everything left and right, but somehow they're only down by one at the end of the first quarter. And then things just got so out of hand at the end of the half, and really just at the end of the game. I'll be honest, there's guys checking in for both these teams, and I watch these teams every night. I'm having to look at box scores. I'm like, who is that guy? Who is this guy coming onto the court right now? Because the Rockets just embarrassed the Chicago Bulls at home. I believe that moves them to 1-5 also at home this season. So not just that they're playing bad basketball, they're playing bad basketball at home. Like, if you're going to play the way you've played this year, where it's up and down and comebacks and getting down early and having fun basketball, at least do it at home for the fans that care and pay. But they're just, to do that in Chicago, the night before back-to-back, and tomorrow night we'll be here doing a show, and they take on the Detroit Pistons. Detroit Pistons, a team tanking not that long ago, 3.5-point favorites as we start this show, as we do this show right now. That's what people think of the Bulls. They need to come out and shoot the ball much better, but just play much better defense in this next game, because We'll get to it in the third segment of the show tonight because it's just, like I said at the very beginning, this is a win if you're saying the Bulls need to tank and just blow this thing up and trade everyone, because nights like tonight just show you how a young up-and-coming Rockets team in the Western Conference, how far away you are. And maybe I'm extra frustrated because of what happened today in Chicago sports. If you don't know, we do these postcast shows for every single Bulls, Bears, Notre Dame game, and eventually Cubs game. And look, this is where it's just rough day to be a Chicago sports fan. Yep, like Bears are going to beat the Packers, doesn't happen, and then the Bulls come out and just get embarrassed by the Houston Rockets. And like before the show even started, Skylar, I open up the streaming service that we use to get in here and just get ready for the show. And before I can even see it, I see this comment here from Skylar. This Bulls team is a disgrace. 1 quarter and we just gave up. No culture, no leadership, nothing, lost season. Look, I think that is a very fair thing to be feeling right now after the last 2 games. Where even though like you're competitive versus the Cavs, more competitive, I guess, 144 to 126, but giving up 287 points is just not good basketball. And the thing is the people who are saying the Bulls are probably too good for their own good, they're probably right. Like they're still going to win games this year to probably put them out of, the top percentage markers for the lottery, but just not good enough basketball. So we will go through some of the things that we saw in this game that I think the Bulls really just, this is where I think there's when you talk about, Skylar talks about lack of leadership, lack of direction, lack of coaching, like things are going so poor for the Bulls in this game. There's a couple things I think we can really like deep dive into in the next segment. This is going to be a short one here, this first segment here, because what else is there to recap? They got killed by the Houston Rockets. If you missed it, for the 4th time in the Rockets franchise history, they scored 80 points in the paint. Just not good basketball. And that is something that we've noticed from the very beginning of the season, that even when the Bulls are shooting well and the team they're playing is not, like the Rockets weren't great tonight shooting the basketball. The points in the paint are just a huge issue for the Bulls defensively, and that is something that I think we all have kind of come to terms with already, that the Bulls just do not have an answer for. They do not have the ability to consistently stop guys in the paint, and Alperen Şengün and the Rockets were just doing whatever they wanted to throughout most of this entire game, just destroying the Chicago Bulls. So what the pivot stuff, like what do they need to pivot away from? When things are going bad, like where is Billy Donovan? Where is someone just yelling at these guys, telling them to stop doing what they're doing? Where is the coaching adjustments as things are falling away from you? We'll get into that next because there's a couple things that really stood out for me in this game that kind of peeved me as we watched the Bulls lose 143 to 107, I believe was the final score. I was getting ready for the stream when they started, hustling with a minute left, and they're laughing at the Bulls in this game. So we'll get into that next here on the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp right now is, if you need help, BetterHelp is the way to go. Today's show brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. This month is all about gratitude, the month of November. We're here. It's Thanksgiving season. We're all getting ready for it, and then Christmas will be here before you know it. But this month is the month of gratitude. And along with the person, we want to thank every single day. I think about my family, my parents, my wife. Like we just got back from a trip. My parents being a huge help. My wife, awesome, dealing with the kid right now as we're doing this show. We have to thank ourselves as well. Sometimes it's hard to remind ourselves that we are trying to make the best of our lives, not just for us, but for the people around us. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule, which we know in today's world, when everyone's super busy, being able to do everything online is super easy and just definitely the way to go. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get $10 off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, you guys can drop your comments in here in the game or in the YouTube chat about talking about today's game and what you saw, your frustrations. Like, it's all there. It's like we just said in that first segment, tough day to be a Chicago sports fan. Tough season, couple of seasons when all these teams are below 500 and missing the playoffs pretty consistently right now. But some stuff in this game that I want to kind of pick on for the Bulls a little bit. Some stuff where I think that when you just talk about bad basketball and bad coaching, I think we really saw in this game. First of all, we'll start with a three-point shooting. I know it's your plan. I know it's your plan to run up and down the court and have the number one pace in the NBA and to be trying to, take as many shots as possible because you think it's going to work. You think that the more shots you put up is going to work. It's how the Bulls multiple times this season have gotten down 20 points and how they've come all the way back and won some of those games. How they've gotten leads in the fourth quarter and then eventually fallen apart because they just keep shooting their way in and out of basketball games. But on a night like tonight, when you're shooting 26% from the three-point line in the first half, at what point does Billy Donovan say, please stop? Please stop doing this. Please stop shooting these threes, running down the court, not making any passes, shooting a three because you're bricking it. You're then not able to get any offensive rebounds. And then you're just giving the other team basically transition points. That's the problem with today's NBA is that when you're shooting like this, it's not good. Chat points out right here, Josh Giddey, they were feeding it all day. So far, Josh Giddey has been a pleasant surprise from the three-point line, above 40%, but a night like tonight, just a total mess. And they were giving him that shot all night long. They were treating him like Russell Westbrook, just saying, hey, you take this shot, you're going to miss it. We're not worried about it. And Ayo, again, he is just struggling this season. His worst three-point shooting percentage of his career so far. It's really not even close. It's the one guy who, when he's struggling like this, I still think Ayo's going to figure it out this season. And I think that's why for him, they're kind of saying maybe shoot out of it a little bit. But they're just taking all these threes and they're just bricking left and right. And no point is it just stop. Stop. Attack the paint. Get the ball to Vooch. Let him work in the post. Alperen Sengun is a fine defensive player, but he's not a great defensive player. Tonight's a night where you have to pivot and go to a two-man game almost exclusively with Vooch and someone else because just a three-point shot is not falling, and you're just – because especially, think about it, the game was close. Get back into a rhythm offensively, doing other things, and then start taking the three again. It's not that hard of a concept of just getting some easy buckets, watching the ball go into hoop, for a guy like Ayo, finding a way. I mean, because early on, we saw the Bulls, I thought were, early on in the game in the first quarter, they were cutting to the basket effectively, had a couple nice buckets there from Zach LaVine in the first half, in the first quarter, really, but then it just obviously barely shot the ball the rest of the game. And then as I'm typing out my notes preparing for the show today, and I have here Vooch getting cooked by Sengun, change who's defending him. Didn't have Julian Phillips on my my checklist of guys I expected to be guarding Alperen Sengun in this game. What a size mismatch. I get it. I guess that's the way they felt they had to go. The athleticism for Phillips is something that was going to work for them. And then early on in this game, this isn't a pivot thing, but of all the guys you're going to let destroy you and cook you, Fred VanVleet, of all the guys on the Rockets, there's a lot of really star young players, potential star young players on this team. Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, Amen Thompson's a lot of fun to watch. Tari Eason coming off the bench. Fred VanVleet, 24 points, I think it was in the first half, just getting whatever he wants at will. That's where I think when you talk about effort, being locked in, that's a guy that should not be dominating you in the way that you are. These games are going to happen. It's an 82-game season. It is not the end of the world. It is not the only team they're going to be the rest of the year, but it is frustrating to watch a guy like Fred VanVleet just have his way with the Chicago Bulls because he's not that great anymore. He never was a great basketball player in itself. And yeah, I mentioned this Vooch one here, but just getting crushed defensively by Alperen Sengun. That's where this is where I go back to the offseason and you talk about the construction of this roster. This was, to me, always a glaring gap. With this, I've officially given up on the idea that Jalen Smith and Vooch are going to be on the court at the same time together. They clearly have no interest in that. They're not going to do it. So we're not going to see that this year. But there is that lack of super athletic big man that can help Vooch out when he's having a tough night defensively. Someone that can help answer the questions to your problems as he is just getting kind of worked over by a much younger and right now better basketball player. I mean, I guess Patrick Williams can't be that guy. I guess Jalen Smith can't be that guy. It's trying to answer the call with Julian Phillips. So just a really poor performance. I mean, this is, I can't get over the number enough. It's a staggering number. 287 points in 2 games. It's just crazy. Skylar says here in the chat, once again, AK and Eversley don't know how to construct a winning roster. Well, I think the problem with the Bulls, like big picture, and we'll kind of look at this more into the next segment because, frankly, I don't know what else there's to talk about in a game like this. When you look at the construction of this roster, they're a play-in roster, and that is just who they are. You know, the last 2 years being a play-in team, losing to the Miami Heat, like that's just kind of what they're constructed to be. Again, now they might fall short of that this season, but they're not set up to be a, winning an actual round of a 7-game series team, and they're also not set up to really be one of the worst teams in the league. And when you have no trade market for your young players, your up and coming or your established players like Vooch and Zach LaVine, it kind of puts you in a tough spot. But this goes back to like, why did you make the trade for Josh Giddey in a world where you need effective 3-point shooting? And he's been pretty good so far this season. Like, I don't want to discredit him too much on one night of really bad shooting, but nights like tonight, or it's like, why was the move, and why did you not get more than just a player in return when the Thunder had given up on Josh Giddey, and instead of giving one of their like 300 first-round draft picks back, that's all you got was Giddey for Alex Caruso. So I do think it's fair to point out the overall roster construction. And you see a team tonight that's, younger, more athletic, and I personally, I am biased here, covering, besides if you missed it, just to fill people in listening on the YouTube, I work at ESPN Houston. I host a radio show there, so I'm very familiar with the Rockets rebuild, has looked like. But that's a team that, really looks like they can do some damage this year, and they proved it tonight defensively, where, I mean, look, even, you talk about pivoting and finding something, an answer for something, Dylan Brooks is just, face guarding Zach LaVine, for chunks of this game and taking him completely out of it. And Billy Donovan had no answer to getting Zach LaVine open. And you needed him on a night like tonight as the game is just falling farther and farther and farther away from itself. You need Zach LaVine to score, and he shot 9 times in this game. It's just not enough. I mean, look, Vooch, Kobe White, and Zach LaVine scored 21 of the first 26. That's it. Zach LaVine was one of 2 players to score in double-digit points in tonight's game. The other one was THT, a guy who's playing exclusively garbage time minutes right now. So just a very ugly, ugly game for the Chicago Bulls against the Houston Rockets. And we'll see I think we'll learn a lot tomorrow about who the Rockets are, who the Bulls are as a basketball team. How do you respond against the Detroit Pistons? Are you going to do the same thing and give up another 120-plus, 130-plus point performance by the Pistons? And now you've played 2 good teams. This is not so much with the Pistons, but how do you handle tomorrow night's game in a back-to-back? I think will be important for the Bulls this season. So it's frustrating a night like tonight. It's tough to do shows like this, watching your favorite basketball team just get run out of the gym and have a really pathetic performance across the board. So when we get back, let's talk about tonight just being a win for the pro tank fans out there for the Bulls, because I think that number is going to grow. I feel myself swaying already in that direction. Plus, I got a couple observations because I cover these 2 teams on a daily basis now. A couple guys that I would be looking out for when you think big picture, and this might just be part of the show as the Bulls struggle this season, as guys we identify of what's the fit for the Bulls if there were a move to be made with the team that's beating them 143-107. So we'll do that next, a win for the Pro Take fans here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. This is the Locked On Bulls Postcast. My name's Joe George. We'll get into that next right here on the Locked On Sports Chicago.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. You missed out on the $250, but now they got the $150 for you. That still helps you out quite a lot. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've been telling you guys how important that is of a tool to get all the information you need on the same page where you place your bets. It just streamlines that whole process. So go to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. You get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 bet. When you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
So tonight's a clear win for the pro tank, blow this thing up, fans for the Bulls. And that is something that I think we all struggle with as fans. Like, you don't want your team to always be intentionally a loser. Like, if you're a Cubs fan, we saw it. It worked out great. They won the World Series in 2016, but we're seeing now for the White Sox on the other side of town, like, how bad it can go. 120 loss plus season for them this year. So, like, the balance of a tank is definitely something that I think is hard. And what the Bulls do after nights like tonight, like, I wonder what the conversation for AK is like with Reinsdorf, and his kid. Like what is the conversation of like what the Bulls can be this season? How far, can they even be a play-in team? If you're not going to be a play-in team, then that's where I think it is a fair assessment to say, well, you should just trade Zach LaVine at some point early on in this season when he's playing his best basketball, when he's healthy. That's important for Zach LaVine. Can you find someone for Vooch and just, run these young kids, run Ayo and probably still Kobe White and, Modest, getting him more minutes outside of the G League, just more consistent league minutes in the NBA. Like, is that the path that the Bulls should probably head on? And when you watch a game like tonight, when you lose 143 to 107, it's hard not to think that, because you see young, talented teams in the Western Conference, in the Eastern Conference, between the Rockets and the Cavs, just really have their way. And, the status of Billy Donovan, I think, will always be in question this season. But just a night like tonight, it raises those questions to an all-time high when you just get embarrassed on your home floor. It's just not good enough basketball. It's not a good enough roster. And it's just not an enjoyable experience. Like, when your fans can't watch the game, when you're having to, give season ticket holders free access to an app so they can only watch the Bulls but not also watch the Blackhawks or eventually the White Sox, when the season rolls around, when Xfinity won't take your deal so you're not on television for, it's like 50% of Chicago still, I think it is, right now, can't even watch these games. It's a hard sell to be like, yeah, they should just keep going this way. They should just keep running these guys out there and saying, hey, Zach LaVine, there's going to be nights where he scores 30 points and the Bulls are winning games and they're having fun. And but just a night like tonight is super, super frustrating. And I think a lot of it is angst from this afternoon, the Bears lost to the Packers, but it just kind of all compounds for Chicago sports fans of what we're seeing from these teams. You want more, you want better. And for the Bulls, this is where it really is a win for the pro tank fans, because what's the argument of keeping it together on a night like tonight? I mean, when you're shooting that poorly and your coach just doesn't make adjustments, and it's just how they're built. Like, they're not going to attack the paint more. That's also very clear. Like I guess I can keep asking for the Bulls to pivot in these games when they're not shooting the ball very well, but because they're having some success in some of these losses that turn into comebacks that are still losses, but you're down by 20 plus points in these games, and some of them you're winning, some of them you're losing, but you're doing that effectively by shooting the 3-point ball and getting out of it. Weirdly, the weirdest part about this game tonight is that even as the Bulls are down by 16 at the end of the first half and they're shooting 26%, my thought process, because of what we've seen from the Bulls this year, is, well, they're going to start making some buckets here and they're going to at least close this gap. But they just were not able to do so tonight against a team that plays really excellent defense. This is an ugly game. So if you got any comments left in, we can and try and check through here to see if there's anything that we didn't get. Question here of why is Giddey and Ayo shooting more? Well, just because it's the book. It's the book on the Rockets, right? I mean, on the Bulls right now. The Rockets knew going into this game that they're just going to let those guys shoot as many threes as possible and shut down Vooch and LaVine and Kobe White, and those are going to be the guys that don't beat you. And that's the struggle when Giddey is in the game. He's not shooting the ball well. They pull him kind of early. Ayo comes in, and he's not shooting the ball well either. And we've seen now, it is clear, when they have games that are competitive in the fourth quarter, when they're in these crunch time basketball games, that Giddey's not the guy that's out there. I mean, even like then, like I wonder, like what does the Reinsdorf family, what does AK think of like this trade when in your closing group, your kind of one move this offseason is a guy that can't even be on the court because he can't shoot the ball effectively enough. So ugly game for the Chicago Bulls. Tough day to be a Chicago sports fan, as are most days. But that's why we thank you for hanging out with us. That's why we thank you for hitting that subscribe button to Locked On Sports Chicago. Maybe the Cubs will actually spend some money, and by the time baseball season gets here, we'll get to talk about a winner. We do get to talk about a winner on Saturdays. If you are a Notre Dame fan, we do live postcast shows for Notre Dame games. So as long as they don't choke in Yankee Stadium next week, we'll be doing another one as they continue to go on and try to make the college football playoff this year. So every single Bulls, Bears, Cubs, Notre Dame game, we are here live on Locked On Sports Chicago, suffering with you as things are just not good right now for a lot of our favorite teams in the Windy City. That will do it for us. We'll be back tomorrow live after the Detroit Pistons game, hopefully a much better one for the Bulls. Got to get back right if you're going to continue this season as a meddling playoff team or play-in team. A game like tomorrow night is one that is a must after giving up 287 points in their last two games. My name is Joe George. Find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. Hit that subscribe button for Locked On Sports Chicago. Find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Find Locked On Bulls there for their daily content and the audio of these postcast shows as well. So we will talk to you tomorrow night for another edition of the Locked On Bulls postcast. Peace.